Hello, Soul Focused Radio family. This is Martin Friedman, aka Teddy Bear Moses, and I am solo once again. I want to kick off our podcast episode this week. We're going to be talking about emotional vulnerability. And for various reasons, which you'll hear about in a minute, it's just me today. And I'm having a conversation with Jay Martin, who is somebody I had never met before, recommended by Cindy. Cindy was supposed to be with us. She wasn't able to, but we had an amazing conversation about emotional vulnerability. And it was really cool to talk to somebody that I had never talked to before. So I'm not going to hold you any longer. I want you to go ahead and I want you to listen to this week's episode on emotional vulnerability. So here we go.
When you come to the Soul Focus Group, you come to an acknowledgement that there has been injuries done to us from all these different forms of oppression. Injuries that have impacted our subconscious mind, our heart, our spirit, our very soul. So at the Soul Focus Group, we recognize that and we focus on healing. Healing, the return or the recovery of our connections to our healthy self, our beautiful thinking mind. We want you to come join us in a movement of healing all around the world to restore us back to our rightful state. At the Soul Focus Group, we heal.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman. And once again, it's just your host, Martin Friedman. It was supposed to also be Martina and Cindy. Martina is busy with her family, and Cindy is feeling just a little under the weather. So she was supposed to be a part of this segment, but we decided we would go ahead and have this segment anyways. I want to introduce you to someone who I've only met, and I've only met him auditorily for the last 10 minutes. But this is Jay Martin. Say hi, Jay.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Super grateful.
And we're super grateful for you coming on. We are going to be talking about emotional vulnerability, everybody, which is a subject that is very, near and dear to the Soul Focus Group and to what we do. And when Cindy and Martina and I were brainstorming, Cindy said we have to get Jay on here to talk about it. So Jay is here. And as I said, I'm just meeting him with you all. So I'm really excited for this conversation. So Jay, get us going by just telling us a little bit about who you are.
Well, first of all, again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It means the world when people say, hey, could you come on and talk? And the funny thing is, I'm kind of shy when it comes to being interviewed. I'm kind of shy. I'm always the person on the other side asking the question. So it's a little bit vulnerable for me. But I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. My dad was in the military, and we went from Buffalo to San Diego, from San Diego to Washington State. We had the option of going to Japan or something, and he said, no, we're going to go to Washington State. And so that would have been a cool experience. So pretty much a Pacific Northwest native, and have been enjoying life, and am so grateful to be in the media world where I get to do television and podcasting, and been married for 18 years now, and we have three amazing, crazy kids that have dreams themselves, and we just try to be like a bowling alley aisle, and we just let them bump into us, and we help give them perspective as they go down to their success. So that's what we do. That's what we do. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on here. And for sharing this with us. As I told you before, and as our listeners know, I'm from Cleveland, which is just down the road. I think it's like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours from Buffalo. And we share that kind of industrial, that background. I know you didn't spend a lot of time in Buffalo, but I definitely relate to that. Yeah. And but also spent 30 years in Seattle, as our listeners know too. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Excited for you to be on. I do get excited when people are even just born from places close to Cleveland. I get I don't know. I'm very geographic centric, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but yeah, so I really want to, ask you because, one of the things I didn't get the chance to ask Cindy, because as I said, she was feeling a little under the weather and I didn't want to bother her, but I wanted to ask her like, well, what was it about Jay that you wanted to have him on a podcast episode where we talk about emotional vulnerability? So I'm going to ask you, what does that mean to you? How does the term emotional vulnerability, how does it resonate with you? How does it sit with you? Why do you think Cindy asked you to be on this episode?
Well, it's interesting. I'm a big person, and I'm a big person about conversations, and we've had some really great conversations. Cindy or her husband Kelly. Shout out to you, Kelly. Cindy, love you guys. But I've had a lot of different conversations with people, and one of the things that I have stressed before is what it's like to feel like you cannot reveal who you really are. And when I say that, for just context for myself, I kind of grew up with feeling like I had to wear masks to adapt to the space so I could fit in. And it wasn't until I had booked a commercial, it was for Amazon. And it was my first commercial after going through, and I've shared this before with my viewers, but I had like a nervous breakdown like 5.5 years ago. And it was basically based on the fact of I just could not keep up with the image that I was trying to carry. And I could not be myself. It was almost like this wall, this horrible wall, this barricade. And it wasn't until really I had booked this commercial and I was thinking I was going to have to be somebody, act in the commercial, play a character. And, what happened was I remember sitting in the dressing room getting ready, and I was looking for the script. And they said, "Oh, no, there's no script." I said, "Well, what do you want me to be?" They said, "Oh, we hired you just for you. That's all we wanted." And I was like, "Well, wait, no, this is finally like my break. I get to be somebody else." And they said, No. We hired you just to be you. We just want you to talk and share." And I was like, "Could I be excused for a minute?" And they were like, "Sure." I went to the bathroom and I cried, Martin. I cried so hard because for the first time, I didn't have to be anybody else. I could just be myself. And that is something that I try to connect with people on, is really pushing for the most authentic self you can be. I really struggled for so long on carrying this image. And finally, for the first time in my life 5 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to be me. And, I did that for like over 30 years, just like, 20, pretending. And so I started to tap into, well, who am I? Who do I say I am? And what does that look like in the world I live in today? And I have used this example before. To me, truth is I live in a certain city. Vulnerability is here's the address to my home. For the first time, I'm letting people come into my life from a different perspective. I'm not just giving you the outer exterior, but I'm letting you see the inside of me, to where, and that takes a lot of trust. You know what I mean? That takes big trust. And so I'm finally allowing people to see a different side to me. At the same time, I try to create spaces where people can be their most authentic selves as well. So that's kind of like, I guess that's probably why she wanted me to come on. That was probably a mouthful, but I have really expressed deep down that it feels good to let go of the mask that I was given, and to finally be myself, is to discover how beautiful the world is.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And at Soul Focus Group, we call what you just said, we call that giving our accurate location, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you said you can give the city, but you give them the actual address. And we say that it's fundamental, for our growth, for our personal growth, and for our collective growth as in humanity. For humanity, what we, as you and I talked before we came on, everything we're focused on at Soul Focus Group now is creating human solidarity. And in order to have human solidarity, we have to have that self solidarity. And how can you have solidarity with yourself if you aren't giving your accurate location to other people?
Right.
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 And if you don't really know who you are. That's a really powerful story. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a relate. I studied acting from the time I was pretty young, like 11 years old, through college. I left college, moved to Seattle thinking I was going to be an actor in Seattle theater.
Wow.
I ended up not doing that. But I've never really stopped acting. And I realized, when I left Seattle 6 years ago, and I started coaching with my DRCO, and he asked me these series of questions, and very similar to you, Jay, I realized that I was acting like, and I believe I said this on a previous podcast recently, but I was acting like an anti-racist organizer. I was acting like an anti-racist educator. I was acting like a good employee, acting like a good partner, to my, to my wife. We weren't married, but we were together 20 years, and I was acting like a friend, but I never it would be like, I would be exhausted when I would be by myself. I would be exhausted, and all I'd want to do is just numb out,
Right.
and I had all my little addictions I could numb out to, turn the TV on, all of that stuff, Jay. And it's just because it was just like, I really wasn't authentically me, and so I really relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's something I always go back to, before you can be built up, there has to be a breakdown. And people run from emotional breakdowns, but it's the very thing that is needed. It is healthy. You think about people say, oh, they passed out. The reason why you sometimes pass out from a certain situation so your body can reboot. It's the same thing with a breakdown. And so I'll never forget when for me as a black man, I can't speak for everybody else, but there was this feeling of you just cannot talk. You don't talk about your past. You don't deal with issues. You kind of just stuff it and you move on. And for the first time, my grandmother played a really big role in my life through my teenage years, through my 20s, all the way up to her passing in 2020. And she was big on, she would say, honey, you should talk to somebody. You should talk to somebody that can help you see perspective. Therapy is good. It is not just for white America. It's for all America. It's for the world. And I was afraid because I was like, but what if I share something or I say, and I'm not ready. It's just, it takes time, but you need to get vulnerable with yourself before you can get vulnerable with people. You have to acknowledge where you're at and stop running from the breakdown. Anything worthwhile or anything that is amazing has to be melted down first. And so I've learned that the meltdown is actually the process of being refined to become the best you could ever be. And there's always a continuation of a melting process, but I think there's something to be said about allowing yourself to be melted down so that way you could really find out what is there, and what doesn't need to be there will be burned away. I kind of say it's like gold, you know what I mean? You come out as pure gold, but I think there's a process in all of our lives where you have to allow yourself to go through the emotional meltdown. It is okay. I learned to cry, to let it out, to share, even as a man, you can do it. It is good to do that because on the other side of that, you're going to help somebody else get through their process, and so it is very important. And I can't stress that enough. I am grateful. I used to run from it, man. Martin, I used to run. I used to run from it. I'll just be another character. I'll just morph into something else. And you can only do that so long before eventually you just run out. You just can't do it anymore. And for me, that was me. It was taking a toll on my marriage, on being a father, on opportunities. It just could not connect. And so, to be vulnerable strengthens all different types of relationships. On the other side of vulnerability will strengthen your friendship, will strengthen your relationships or people you connect with, because they will feel like they're really getting you. And my grandma used to say, honey, opportunity is looking for you, but it keeps running around you because it can't find the real you. It keeps running up against the mask you keep wearing. So when do you want to be vulnerable? And I would pause and I would take it in. I'd be like, okay, I finally did that before she passed away. And she was so happy to see that for me. So.
That's beautiful. She got to see it,
Yeah.
because that's a real transformation.
Hmm.
What you're saying is so much stuff is coming up to me, right? Because I'm thinking of like alchemy, right? Like you alchemize that pain, because you talk about turning things into gold. It's like you alchemize that pain
Hmm.
and that trauma that you had, and you alchemize it into transformational change. We recorded a podcast. It's one of our most popular about a year ago, where we talked about transforming from a caterpillar to a butterfly. And that
Right.
can be a
Right.
painful experience too.
Yes. Yes.
We don't really know. And, we don't, because none of us have been caterpillars, or if we have, we don't remember it probably, but it certainly looks like it's painful. It certainly looks like there's a lot of effort that has to happen to make that transformation.
Hmm.
So a lot of times that pain if you feel comfortable, I mean, if you don't, please say no. I'm
Right.
just wondering if you wouldn't mind just to tell us a little bit more about what happened with your breakdown. And the reason why I'm asking is because, I think that it's something that a lot of us probably have experienced and maybe didn't even know we experienced it. I also think that for those of us that maybe haven't experienced it, I think maybe hearing just a little bit, whatever you're willing to share about the dynamics of what actually happened, if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I think of one of the biggest scenarios is there's nothing like the relationship between a child and their parents or parent. And for me, it was very challenging. I was the oldest, growing up in the family. So the heavy responsibility, heavy responsibility growing up. And so I really didn't have much of like a childhood, because a lot of it was having to really be there for my family. And I didn't know the balance at that age, and so you go through life, and I didn't really have the best relationship with my father. It was more from the aspect of, if I do good, I'm accepted. But if you make that mistake, you just feel like it's no good. And so that from that point on, I began to view a lot of things that way. And that's how I said the mask, because you're trying to please, people pleaser. And so you go through that. And I would probably say, previous to the 5 years, I probably spent about a good 10 years really trying to be what he wanted me to be. And, I always say, from the bigger picture, what happens when you've worked so hard to be what they want you to be, and then it comes down to it, and then they don't want you either. They don't even want what you tried to become. And so, I had an online series. I was doing different interviews. I'm going back for context. I was doing interviews. I was hoping to make it on television. I had some opportunities on the table, and they just seemed to not connect. And I felt like, well, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong? What's going on? Why am I not connecting? Why aren't things opening up for me? And I call that process. There is a process that we all must go through, and we cannot skip the process, regardless of what Instagram or Facebook or any social media tries to show you in 30 seconds. That is not life. Life is a process. And so they say anybody that has made it to whatever type of success they found, it has actually taken them almost 10 years to get there. It's just you are finally seeing the manifestation of the result. But that process, it's that hiding season. It's that season of just being in the dark. And so to get back to it, it was really just the relationship that I had with certain people. It wasn't healthy. And then my own relationship with my own father was not healthy. And so it boiled down to, it just came to a big ending. And at that point, my marriage was pretty much rocky. You're 13 years into it. It's rocky. You're not connecting with your spouse. And I didn't feel like I was a good father. I didn't feel like I was a good husband. I didn't feel that I could really measure up. And so what do? You just kind of see your way out of the picture. And that's when the meltdown began to take place, because I didn't feel safe to talk to anybody, because I was afraid of being judged. Because in the world I lived in, it was, if you just would have went to God, you would be fine. But I've learned that you can have God and a therapist. I've learned that it is okay to talk. You can pray and communicate. And so I've learned that, and a lot of that did come from like my grandma, but at the same time, when you have that person always in your life in your ear, sometimes you can grow dull to that. And so I learned on my, from picking up all that wisdom, but then fast forward, when I finally just came to an end, I came to the end of me, you know and I think we all have those moments where you come to the end of yourself. That is actually when the new you emerges. When I came to the end of myself, it was no longer I could please my father, I couldn't please the church, I couldn't please friends, I couldn't please business. I just could not do it anymore, this image I was trying to hold up. When I finally came to that ending, and it came from a friend, he said to me, he's like a mentor to me. He said, "Let it all fall. Let it all fall. Let it all fall, Jay. Don't try to carry it no more." And I was crying. I said, "But what am I going to do?" He said, you're going to be new. You're going to start over. This is finally the beginning of the chapter that you get to decide on. What do you want to be? Not what they want you to be. What do you want to be? And that's when I went into therapy. And I started doing some sessions, and I got some good mentors in my life. And one thing I can say about therapy is what is beautiful, if you find the right therapist, and sometimes you got to go through a couple different people, but when you find the right therapist, they say the reason why it's good to talk to somebody is because they have no stake in the claim. They're not biased. They're not pulling from things that they know about you. It's you divulging information and being vulnerable and sharing, and you work through perspective. And so finally, when that happened, I began to see a whole world open up to me, and I am not ashamed. This one thing really stood out to me. I was in a session, and the therapist told me, I didn't understand this, Martin. The therapist said, "You need to get a divorce." And I said, "What?" But no. You need to divorce the relationships you've had with people that have allowed you to wear the mask, where you are a people pleaser, the unhealthiness with even your own father. Divorce it. And go pick up things that you know that you could really become something great with. That's when I ran and saved my family. I grabbed my family. I didn't think about my career. I didn't care if I became a television host. I didn't care if I became anything else. I just wanted to pick up the very thing that I knew I could run with. And that was my wife and my 3 kids. And so we ran. When I say run, we just, we didn't run away, but we ran our own emotional stability.
Yeah.
We ran and we became what we thought we should be. And, nobody's perfect. I think it's always an arrival status. It's never you have arrived. You just keep going. And my wife said something. I think we focus so hard on trying as couples to be this one mind, but you came in as 2 individuals into this world, and so you need to just find a way to enjoy the becoming factor, because until the day you die, you're becoming something, right? So why don't you try enjoying that with each other? That changed everything for us. And so from that breakdown, that's what I started doing. I started working on me. I started talking. I started communicating. And it was no more than 6 months later, a friend said, "Have you ever thought about starting a podcast?" And really just sharing. I said, "Well, I can't talk, my voice is not that kind of voice, Right. I was very insecure in my voice because growing up, that was my biggest insecurity. My siblings had the cool voice. They went through puberty and it changed. I went through puberty and it became like my grandma. I was like, "Oh no, my voice is high." I was like, "What is going on?" Just like, the stress of, but I realized that insecurity actually became my weapon of success. My grandma told me that. And so I believe when you embrace all your insecurities, they can become the very things that help you get to where you've always wanted to go. And so here we are today, almost 5 years later, with the podcast show, and I've interviewed some of the most greatest people that I've always wanted to meet in my line of work, and outside of that as well, but I grew up trying to change everything. Martin, I tried to change my voice. I would practice in the mirror because I was afraid of sounding like a woman. I would be on the phone and people would call and they'd be like, "Ma'am, excuse me, can we help you?" And I said, No, it's not a ma'am, it's a sir, so it was always this echo of, "You're not enough. You're not enough. You can't." And finally, when I let all that go, because that's a part of, the mask, I finally figured out how beautiful the world was because I saw the beauty in myself.
Mm.
So I know that was a mouthful, but that's that.
You've said a couple of times, it's a mouthful, but I mean, that's kind of the purpose of having you on a podcast episode. It's like, if you were being silent right now, I don't think it would work so well. Just saying. So, that was such a powerful story, and I want to really dig in on a couple things.
Yeah.
You said so many things, and thank you for sharing, so vulnerably, that transformational story for you, because I think it's really going to be inspirational for our listeners. And I want to hold up something you said earlier. A couple of things that you said. You talked about therapy in Black communities, and also, when I worked in social services in Seattle, I have this quote always stuck with me, and the quote was, "Undiagnosed depression and other not mental illnesses, but other mental." I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it because I don't see it as an illness, but
Right.
other things going on for you psychologically are
Yeah.
is an epidemic for African American men,
Yes.
and that it's a public health issue,
It
literally,
is.
and it's
It
it's
is.
literally at an epidemic issue. So I think, and I think it's starting to change, but I think you sharing that is really powerful. I wonder what I'd love to hear from you is, how is vulnerability framed to you growing up? How would you have defined vulnerability or being vulnerable as you were coming up?
One of the biggest fallacies there is in the social justice movement is the idea that integration happened. And I know that in a lot of Black and brown households, we have a story that we tell, and that is integration is what really destroyed our community. At the Soul Focus Group, we say, no, that's not true. Integration never really happened. Desegregation happened. We moved from segregation to desegregation, which was the moving of Black and brown bodies into white spaces, but our consciousness was never invited. And true integration cannot happen unless you invite a person's consciousness into the circle. Cultural integration is absolutely necessary in order to have true integration. At the Soul Focus Group, we bring everybody's cultural consciousness, everybody's cultural intelligence into the circle. We respect it, we honor it, because we know it has a purpose, powerful purpose. Come join us at the Soul Focus Group. Integrated consciousness is powerful.
Vulnerability, like I said before, is locating yourself
Right.
and being open. I really didn't see that. Growing up in my household, I didn't see that. And my mother, I know that she struggled with certain things, and it was very tough. It was very tough, seeing that side, and I now understanding the bigger picture. I knew she struggled with depression. I knew she struggled with anxiety, and it was very tough. But you just didn't. Again, you didn't talk about it. You just didn't talk about it. And I remember seeing certain episodes with my own mom. And fast forward, you just don't talk about it. It was, you're crazy. See, that's how it was. It was not the talk of, well, maybe you're just having a moment, or there's some mental things you need to work through. No, it was, for a person to have issues, you're just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up, you didn't feel safe to say, hey, these thoughts are in my mind. And if I'm very transparent with you, like, there were many days for me that I struggled with depression. As a teenager, going into my 20s, I got married young, and I was always trying to do something to fix me, not willing to, though, divulge the pain that I had gone through, or I didn't know how to communicate that. So for me growing up, I didn't know what vulnerability was because all I saw was the episode. So I didn't see the leading up of communication. I just saw the breakdown, the screaming, the yelling. That's what I saw. And so I didn't know why that would happen, or, I just would see, the final picture. And so I didn't understand what vulnerability meant until I got into my 30s, and that it was safe as a man to share. aside from just the spiritual side of things. Like, what else is out there? I believe that there's a reason why people have been placed on this earth with the skills that they have, or they wouldn't exist, you know? It's like, there's a reason why there's a grocery store. Why? So you can go get groceries. So, like, there's a reason why there are therapists that work through and understand.
Right.
There's different types of therapists, but they work with the mind. They work with your emotions. They work. There's a need for that. There's a necessity for that. And if there wasn't, then they wouldn't be here. And so I didn't understand what vulnerability meant without it being an episode, or it being, that's what I call it, or a breakdown. And so I realized that actually, if there was communication, the breakdown would have probably been a little bit different, but there still would have been a breakdown. But on the other side of the breakdown, you would have got an answer. And that's the difference. Is growing up for me, there were just no answers. It was just trying to navigate through darkness completely and not understanding why you feel the way you feel, you know? And so they did the best that they could with what they had, right? That's what I say. For my dad and mom, they did the best they could with what they had and what they were taught. And so I believe God puts people in your life, that it could be a friend, it could be an auntie, an uncle, a manager. Somebody will speak something, and if you're listening, it'll resonate with you. And for me, that was my grandma, and then there were other people in my life. But again, I didn't know what vulnerability meant, because to be vulnerable meant to be weak. It meant to be weak. And so
yes, you got to exactly, man. I'm like, you got to exactly what I was feeling. Thank you. Thank you for saying that word. Thank you for saying that word, because, and the way you said it so strongly too, Jay, because I know that for me, when I went through my transformation on what vulnerability meant to me, I realized I had always seen vulnerability as weakness, right?
yeah,
And that's how we get acculturated, especially as men in this society. And I know, we're different racially and culturally, ethnically, and I still know that no matter what we were taught, and I know this is true for the women in my life too, that for many women it's like you can only be vulnerable. It's almost like a performative vulnerability. Like there's sort of like a fake vulnerability that's okay,
right.
but like true, real vulnerability, really giving your accurate location, really being truthful about who you are, what's going on for you, is and really connecting to your true self. One of the things I wanted to say to you, Jay, as I was listening to your story, is that when you said your self is coming to an end, what I heard really strongly is that this false self was coming to an end. This performative self was coming to an end, but not the real self. The real Jay, the real self was about to come out.
Yes.
The phase of you being a caterpillar, that was ending.
Right.
And the breakdown was your I can't think of the name. Was it a pupa? Is that what do we call the
Yes.
caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly? Is it? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, right? So that's like the breakdown point was there, and then from that point forward, what's that?
Yeah, I can't identify the word.
Yeah, it's like a cocoon, but I think it's a pupa or something. I can't remember. I'm sure people are either laughing or just shaking their heads.
Almost kind of like when they go into the cocoon stage.
I prefer them to be laughing than any other emotion right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I felt so strongly, was you shedding that false self and then really connecting to your true and authentic self,
right?
Coming out of that stage into your, as we would say, like, into your butterflyness, like fully stretching your wings. And I mean, I was just feeling that really strongly as you were talking,
And even when you said the word, we both came to the terms of like weakness, vulnerability. I'm going to come from a positive side right now.
Yes.
With that term. I have a wonderful trainer. I have a few of them, but one of them, he does strength training with me. His name is Remington White. Phenomenal guy. There's a stage in when I lift to where not only do I have to accept that there's weakness, but I give him permission to help me identify the weakness. And so I think what happens is we get to the space where we need to be at, and there's somebody there that wants to help you. But unless you're able to admit that you are weak in this area, this is a weakness, which doesn't make you a horrible person. It doesn't make you this weirdo. No, it allows you to identify, this is where I'm not strong and I want to give this to you. I do that with my trainer. I'm letting you know I cannot push press this amount. I'm weak here. How do I strengthen this? And then it's an open conversation. It's real. And then I begin working towards strengthening, where now that weakness actually becomes the very part of me that is successful. That is what that vulnerability is for me. And so it's the positive side to it is, once it's identified and the person you've connected with helps you see what you can do, you get perspective on it. We're going to try it this way. We're going to do it this way. We're going to work it. It's the same person, same body, but we're going to work it a different way. We're going to come at it because we're going to make this a strength for you. So that way you can get a result and it helps somebody else. That's the importance of identifying the weakness, because on the other side of you identifying it and then you releasing that and finding strength to work through it, somebody else has a weakness probably similar like you.
Absolutely.
And that's why, the term of we have more in common than we don't. There are a lot more people out there that are waiting on the other side of, what does it look like to work through this? That's why I do what I do. I do it for me, number one. I do it for my marriage. I do it for my children. And I do it for people, because somebody else is out there right now, just like I was. What am I going to do? Should I just end my life? Nobody's going to accept me. Everything's wrong about me. I can't please you no more. What do I do? And I have chosen to really just put myself in the fire and sit in that moment. Just sit in that heat. It's uncomfortable, but there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is actually okay. And I think that's another thing with vulnerability is, you're going to have to step into the uncomfortable, and you might have to deal with some things or hear some things. But if you work through it, that very thing will turn around, and it won't just be your success, but it'll be somebody else's success as well. So you have to identify the weakness.
Yeah. Now I know why Cindy wanted you to be on to talk about this, because without you having been a part of Soul Focus Group, you're basically talking exactly about what we talk about, because you cannot be in solidarity with other people until you're in solidarity with yourself. You have to see emotional vulnerability as a strength. But what I love what you just said. You provided me a new perspective. Yes, emotional vulnerability for me has become a strength. I would not be in the relationship I'm in right now if I was not vulnerable. My current wife, she asked that of me. She's like, I need to basically I was a pretty overweight dude. And she's like, I need you to literally and figuratively just stand naked in front of me. You know what I mean? And our first night we spent together, and I'm telling a lot right now, but I feel like, I walked in the door. I mean, we had, had a couple days, but our second date was at a hotel, when I was visiting her in Pittsburgh, and she's like, as soon as I walked in, she's like, I want you to, just take your clothes off. And I was overweight, out of shape. She's a yogi, super in shape. And I had to go to such a deep, trusting place. I had to trust her on a spiritual level. And if I hadn't been coaching with my D and starting to see vulnerability as a strength, I was working on that every day. And I was like, you know what? I just did it.
Wow.
And I was not her body type. Let me just say that. Let me just say that, Jay. I was not her standard body type. I mean, we've said this on other podcasts. She's been on with me a few times, but first of all, she had written off white dudes. She was never going to be with a white dude, just start there. And then a big, overweight, out of shape dude was just not her thing. And I love the analogy that you gave, because had I not, I had to be able to identify the areas that I was weak to get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really saw it that way before, because I just started to sort of shift my thinking. All right, vulnerability is a strength. Well, what makes vulnerability a strength is because when you're honest, you share what you need to get better at. And that's the only way that you can help yourself, and you can help then other people can be there for you and provide your support. And then, as you said, then you become a model for other people.
There it is. I really believe everything we have is it's kind of like It's like a contingency. It's based on what you're willing to reveal,
Yeah.
and so I look at the life that I have been blessed with just in the past, 5 years, just now a year into television, waiting. But I really believe that waiting process, I tell people, stop running from being hidden. There is something beautiful about being hidden. There is something beautiful about going into the dirt of your own life, planting yourself as a seed and allowing the right source to water you. So when you come up, it is like, wow, really? That's what vulnerability, it's like you go deep down into it. And then when you're on the other side of that, the room is full of people like, wow, I didn't know. Well, I had to get real with some. I had to allow myself to be planted. You either can see yourself as being buried or being planted. It's your choice. I have decided to see myself as there's many spaces of who I am that's being planted, and through good conversations, through mentors, through, therapy, I allow them to water me. I allow those spaces to water me. And this time when I come up, it'll be different. And so what people are seeing today is, I call it this time. It's different. It's different. I'm not coming up and the first thing you see is a mask. I'm not coming up and I'm a people pleaser. Now, here's the thing. There will be triggers, where they want you to go back, but you just got to remind yourself, remember, you paid such a price for your freedom. Why would you trade it in for a counterfeit? Don't do it. You're so valuable. Stick to your freedom. Your freedom costs you everything. Stick to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that what you just described, and I know we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute, but what you just described, Jay, is taking that time for yourself is not a selfish act.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's a service to humanity. And I know in that anti-racist world in Seattle, one of the things that I never felt like it was prioritized for us to take that time for ourselves, because we always had to just be giving and sacrificing of time and energy. And, it was, I was headlong to, an early death, to be honest with you, just physically and emotionally, and prayed for death sometimes. It's interesting because I think I had my breakdown, but I just didn't. I don't think I stopped. I think I had my breakdown on the move when you described it,
Yeah.
I think I had a drive-by breakdown.
Right. However you gotta have it, right? That's all that matters.
Exactly.
Everybody has that moment of when you came to yourself. Everybody has that moment. You can only live your life like that for so long before it's like, so what am I doing? And I feel, honestly, when you continue to just deny the fact of not willing to go through the meltdown, I believe that's how narcissists are birthed. You begin to believe the lie more than you want to live in the truth. But that's me. Mic drop. No, that's me.
100%. All right. We can use that as our mic drop moment. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. One thing I have to say, because it's been sitting with me ever since you said it, you said there's room for both God and therapy, right?
Yes.
And then I also know a lot of people, and probably did this myself over time, also don't make your therapist your God either.
Correct.
Because that definitely happens for a lot of us, where we put everything, I used to be a counselor in Seattle Public Schools for a college preparatory program. And I used to, I had kids that have mental health stuff going on. And, but they had this stigma, Black families, Asian families, Latino families, they had that stigma. And I would describe it like, just approach therapy like the same way you would approach if you broke your leg, right?
Right.
Like, you don't have to be in therapy for the rest of your life. You have something that's not right with you. Go get it fixed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Take that. You don't have to be in therapy for your entire life. Go for 6 months or a year,
Mm-hmm.
and just work on that thing that's broken in you, and let it set, and then you can move forward. But and it also doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that there's something in you that needs to be adjusted.
Well, you think also, and I won't stick too long on this at all, but I also look at it like this. Your car goes in for maintenance, doesn't it? If you have a car, your car goes in for maintenance. You get an oil change. You need your tires rotated. Now that's a car.
Mm-hmm.
You are a human being. What makes you think that you don't need maintenance? What makes you think that you don't need preventative care? What makes you think that you can just go through life and you never get tuned up? That's what therapy is. It gives you moments. So like you said, yeah, you may not need it your whole life, but you might need to go in from time to time to get a checkup so that you don't have surprises pop up that you're like, well, I thought, well, if you would have went in maybe for a little maintenance, you might have known that you could have prevented this moment. So I'm a big stickler. And even if it's not a therapist, you have a mentor, somebody that you look up to that can really help give you perspective. That's what's so beautiful about being vulnerable. It's another perspective. It allows you to see a different side to yourself, and you just get to tap in with it. So I'm grateful that I've been able to and will continue to do that. And I hope to do that through my work and outside of my work.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I'm very grateful to you for taking the time and the energy to, set aside, this time on a Saturday for us to record and for you to give of yourself, and especially never having met me before. And this has been a amazing conversation, Jay. I love your spirit. I love your energy and your approach, and how you really model. You're not just talking about emotional vulnerability, but you've modeled it throughout this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to come on. It means so much.
My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. Repeat after me. My genius, my power, my optimal functioning. That is the jingle of the Soul Focus Group, because we are dedicated to helping you recover your genius, your power, and your optimal functioning. We want you to recognize the unique way that you comprehend things, express yourself, experience, and create in the world. We want to help you recover your genius, your power, your optimal functioning.
Well, that was truly an awesome and powerful conversation. I'm so thankful to you, Cindy, for recommending that Jay be on this podcast. I really enjoyed talking to somebody that's not directly in our network, like in our extended network through Cindy and Kelly, but not in a day-to-day Soul Focus Group realm. It was actually really cool and refreshing. And I think Jay is a beautiful person, has a beautiful soul. And the fact that Jay was willing to share his whole self with us is really a beautiful thing. So I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did. We love having you on this journey with us. And this is a journey of emotional vulnerability. And we know you're practicing your emotional vulnerability as strength. We know you're doing that every day. And that's why you're here with us with the Soul Focus Group, and you listen to all of our podcasts. We encourage you to please come and check out soulfocusgroup.com. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and please subscribe and share. Help us grow and help us get more and more human beings on this journey to become soul focused. So to each and every one of you, I say, thank you so much for listening. We love you. And I also say, please stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay soul focused.